Greetings to everyone watching this. This is Andy Zahner from Purdue. Igor asked me to give a presentation and I said yes. I'm not sure I have anything to offer that is better than the common practices, but I can walk through some observations I've made and I hope it'll give you something to think about. I'll be using 2018 undergraduate SERU results from the AAU campuses. My apologies to the UQ's campuses, but I think the observations I offer are probably relevant, even if your data is not included here. I'm not showing the number of cases on the slides that I'll be showing, but throughout I'm using the full AAU common file for the 9 campuses that did the 2018 undergraduate SERU. That's more than 44,000 records in total. And for each campus, no fewer than 2,909 cases and as many as 7,992 records for one campus. So plenty of records to support the observations we're making. The SERU does a great job of providing us with these different ways of slicing the student population. Most conversations on our campuses about campus climate look along 3 of these dimensions only: race, gender, and sexual orientation, but they all matter, as we'll see. And bear this in mind, if you identify every student who is non-majority in one or more of these dimensions, you're looking at the great majority of all your students. I mean, 80 to 90% of students are going to be non-majority in at least one of these categories. The SERU asks each of these important characteristics, and then it also asks this specific question about whether students feel that their race, their gender, their immigration status, their socioeconomic group is respected. So this is a very good pairing of question and demographic detail to focus their response on this particular aspect of their self-image. We ask elsewhere if they feel in general respected, but having this additional question asking them specifically in terms of these characteristics, do they feel respected, gives us extra power. More than a year ago, our provost at Purdue made a presentation about campus climate to the Board of Trustees, and he used SERU data for his evidence. And he was pleased to use it because Purdue looks good in that year of results. You can see here 4 measures of respect on campus. The values that are shown, the height of the vertical bars, is the percentage of respondents who chose agree or strongly agree with the statement. And you can see here we're looking at the distribution of the 9 campuses by race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, and immigration status. And I've redacted the names of all the other campuses, but I've shown where Purdue is. These slides show that students' feelings of respect are strong across all the campuses and across all 4 dimensions. On just a couple of the campuses, the sentiment dips below 60%. But the SERU data supports a conclusion that whatever demographic tail we're looking at, students overwhelmingly feel they are respected. One weakness of these data are that there's no objective standard for what level of agreement should be considered good enough. So users fall back on relative outcomes. Here, Purdue is second from the highest on race ethnicity. So we must be okay, is the thinking. People don't ask whether 79% at Purdue is good enough. But anyway, it's pretty easy for some users to stop right there and conclude that there just isn't much of an issue. But you're all saying, I'm sure, that those are just the aggregate measures. What about variations within those dimensions? And let's look at that next. This is one way that I presented to the provost that he could present this information and get a lot of detail in each slide, in each chart. These are the same questions as before, but now broken out by the majority group versus the minority. The higher blue bars show the percentage that the majority students, whatever the majority in each division is, responded agree or strongly agree to this "my group is respected on the campus" question. Every campus has the same high favorable rating we saw before. On the race dimension, it's from 74 to 91% of white students agreeing that white students are respected on their campus. But now we can see the gap, because URM students, depicted by the orange bars, are much lower. The range there is from 41 to 56% as compared to 74 to 91%. None of our campuses have anything close to parity of sentiment here. And to dramatize that gap, the line is interposed on top of the bars to show the percentage gap between the majority and the non-majority value. That gap is significant on every campus, and it's from as little as 25% to as much as 46%. And the right-hand scale on each chart shows what the scaling of the line is. My campus has the third highest favorable rating from minority students, which might make us feel good, but it also has the fourth largest gap, and that's not good. I'll give you just a second to look at these charts. It turns out that the variation we see from campus to campus in the percentage of students who feel that their racial group is respected on their campus is very closely tied to the proportions of racial representation on that campus. The campuses that have the highest favorable response to feeling of respect are the campuses with the highest majority component in their SERU response. There may be some effect of especially good student affairs programs or an especially magnanimous student population. But if we look only at the percentage of white students shown on the x-axis, we've already explained 70% of the variation on the y-axis. The R-squared value is shown there for the chart. And as you all know, when a correlation between two variables is as strong as 0.77, you're basically measuring the same thing two different ways. In addition to students of my race are respected on this campus, I'm also displaying I feel valued on this campus to show that it's not one single variable that is closely tied with proportion of majority students, but that another one at least is as well. And I would note that students who said my race or gender or socioeconomic status is respected, but who are not satisfied with the campus climate are interesting to report. And that correlation is not nearly as strong as the ones we're showing. I do not know the reason why not satisfied with the campus climate is not as closely tied with the white percentage, but there are some things we might suppose. The majority of students identify with one or more non-majority group, and any one of those could trigger disagreement about being satisfied with the campus climate. Also, the question invites sympathy for others. A student might feel personally respected for themselves and yet still observe unfairness affecting others, and so not be satisfied with the campus climate, even if they feel valued or they feel that their group is respected on the campus. So for one reason or another, not all measures of campus climate are strongly correlated, but at least these two are, and this is a major fact. The observation that favorable rating is a function of majority percentage holds true across many dimensions, all of these 8 demographic characteristics that are listed on the right. The chart depicts the 9 campus combined values for all the outcomes. To make that clearer, each dot in this chart is the XY pairing for each possible value for each of the 8 questions. There's a dot for men and women on binary gender. There are dots for poor, working class, middle class, upper middle class, and for wealthy on the socioeconomic status question. The observation is, again, that share of population, or response to the SERU, correlates with higher favorable outcomes. The smaller a group is as a share of respondents, the lower their share of agreement to the my group is respected on this campus question. There's one exception, and that's women. Women are the one group that are the majority of respondents among all 9 campuses, yet less likely to give favorable answers to the respected on this campus question. This correlation of 0.36 is really remarkable. It's not as strong as the one we looked at before, but given the variety of questions being measured and the variety of 9 different campuses, it's still surprising to see this very significant R squared. Even though it's not as strong as the others, it is remarkable that the relationship holds across such a wide measure. The dimension that stresses the model the most is probably socioeconomic status. The largest SES group across the 9 campuses is middle class, and that's 41% of the respondents, and it has a 72% favorable rating. But in this case, the low end and the high end are both less. The low end of socioeconomic status, which is low income or poor, is only 32% favorable. Wealthy students are 79% favorable, but only about 3.3% of the respondents in the SERU. So here's another way of looking at the gaps. The length of the vertical lines shows the size of the gaps in our combined 9 campus measures for respected from the least satisfied to the most satisfied category of students. And again, the vertical lines are measuring from the least to the most satisfied category of students within that group. The very long vertical lines show that our campuses are right to be expending energy, working for better campus climate concerning race, sexual preferences, because there's a great deal of range there, a great deal of disequity. The equally long lines for socioeconomic status and political orientation invite us to ask whether those dimensions don't demand more attention as well. I put first generation in there to show that the gap there is not very great compared to the others. But take this with a grain of salt, because the SERU doesn't have a my first generation status is respected question. And so I've used here the generic I feel that I belong question instead. Many campus programs are using first generation as a criterion for describing academic support programs, but it's not evident the first generation is as reliable an indicator as the other factors we have to work with in designing student support programs or targeting the right students into the programs that can benefit them most. That's it. Thank you all for your attention.